Charles, what do we mean when we talk about bridging the digital divide? Does this divide even exist in the very first place?
Thank you, Barak. So as mentioned, we approach, address the digital divides from barrier perspective. So all of us, I know, have different understanding and different, appreciation of the divides. So from the UK Digital Access Program, which is being implemented in 5 countries globally, Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, we look at it from about 4 or 5 barriers, which would translate into divides. So that is really how we have packaged the program to address the digital barriers, Barak. We look at this from a systemic enhancement level, and we are so grateful to the Communications Authority of Kenya, because since we started the program in 2019, we've made great strides. From the digital skilling, we have partners who are catalyzing the demand side of things, but we also work with suppliers from a modeling perspective. What is the greatest challenge? I think all of us agree is lack of local relevant digital content.
Mr. Bilawaya, what does providing affordable access and connectivity entail?
We're going to stick with the math, not mathing. When we started our business, we were a hotspot business in Kibera and Kawangware, so Kibich and Ngwaro. And we realized that the hotspot business was, the math for that one was not mathing. People wanted affordable internet access, but not using a hotspot. They wanted to have it from the comfort of their own home.
Switching the meter band a bit, if I may use that, to Caroline. We talked about connectivity, but the reason we are here is we've been invited by the Communications Authority, which plays a big role in implementing some of the considerations in the policy framework, the ICT policy framework. I think, as mentioned, Kenya has been at the forefront. We had our first ICT policy in 2006. I think it was reviewed in 2020, and GSMA has been at the forefront of bringing together stakeholders from public and private sector to discuss suitable policies that ensure that we leverage the benefits of the information society, of the digital economy, as it were. So what are some of the developments that are taking place, Caroline, and how have we reached where we are, and how will we reach where we aspire to go?
Thank you very much for that, Barak. And before I answer your question, I'm one of those students who used to set their own questions. So I'd like to take a step back and help us understand, when we talk about the digital divide, what exactly are we talking about, and what form of digital divide are we looking to address? Now, at the GSMA, we believe there's two fronts in terms of the digital divide. There is where the rest of the world is and is heading, and there is where Africa is. If you look at the global trends, and if you look at where the world is moving towards, a lot of the markets globally are currently now talking about things to do with 5G maturity. So 5G is much faster connectivity that will provide much faster speeds, and we'll be able to unlock potentials we haven't seen with traditional connectivity. So power verticals, for instance. So that's where a lot of the world is headed. There's already starting talks around 6G. Yeah. So then we come back and ask ourselves, in Africa, where are we in all that? So in Africa, majority of our customers are still connecting to mobile through a 2G device or 3G device. If you speak to operators, mobile operators, majority of their customers, almost 80% of their customers are 2G or 3G. So then we ask ourselves, when we talk about broadband connectivity and the value it provides, how do we make sure that the majority of these customers are actually able to benefit from this broadband connectivity? Because, as I said earlier, we all know the benefits of this. Now, the other thing that the region is also trying to sort of like grapple with is 4G maturity. We have 4G coverage in majority, almost over 90%, 98%. In Kenya at least, and Kenya is one of those countries that is doing very well in terms of investment in ensuring infrastructure in place. But in terms of uptake of 4G, again, it's lagging behind. Yeah? Other regions are already talking about 2G, 3G sunset. Now, in Africa, it's something that we can't even start to think about because, as I said, 80% or thereabout of our customers are still on 2G and 3G. So there is that digital divide already happening globally because it means that Africa, we are going to be left behind by the rest of the world.
My question to you, Adam, even as we think about the issue of innovation. You know, I once bought a Mulika in my hood, and I first noticed that when I powered it up, the spelling was wrong. But I applauded whoever had done it. It must have been done somewhere in industrial area for making sure that I got an affordable device. But just to pick up from where Caroline has left Adam, are we innovating at the right pace? There is a hackathon in every other corner, or an innovation something in every other university. Are these fancies, as you would call them in school, or what's your take?
Thanks, Barrett. So yeah, there are some fundamentals that affect the ability for usage. And the smartphone prices have not actually decreased in the last 4 years, roughly. I think they've been stuck around 3,000 or 4,000 Kenya shillings, the cheapest phone you can get here. And if anything, it might increase because of exchange rate fluctuations and the very large and increasing taxation that keeps being applied, unfortunately, to smartphones. Personally, Huawei does not provide very, very affordable smartphones anymore. There's another issue. If you're going to pay 4,000 for a smartphone, chances are the battery's not very good, it's not going to be very waterproof, and you'll break it and very quickly. And that's another issue. So having a cheap smartphone doesn't necessarily mean it's the best smartphone to have. So there's obviously an issue. Unfortunately, as much as everyone loves to always say, can we just make smartphones cheaper? And there's no magic bullet to say, yes, you can get a wonderful, high-quality smartphone that's waterproof and you can drop and will be fine. But, 1,000 shillings, which is literally, I think, physically impossible.
Mr. Haji, I think the issue of frequency and whether it's adequate has been raised. We are seeing Poa and other players doing bilawaya, but DJ akiweka radio, vijana wanaanua. So I don't know if now we should look for alternatives, because now we are having fiber cuts, but also we are not talking about the radios that are being stolen, like cotton out there, new problems being introduced. So could you give us your take on the issues that our other distinguished panelists have raised regarding the adequacy of the current spectrum provisions? Of course, 2.4 and 5.8 have been available as the ones you don't need to get the license for, but they seem to be choking. Is there a possibility for us to open up 6G, for example, or we left analog and went digital? We don't know what's happening with what we left the analog ones. Could they potentially help the current situation that we have? Over to you, Mr. Haji.
Thank you, Barak. To quickly respond to my definition of digital divide to carry from Carol's is, in Kenya, it is Nairobi vis-a-vis West Pokot. Hers is Africa and the world. For Kenya, for CA is myself and my mom at home. That's what we are really focusing on this time. It's even, there's another divide between the industry and regulatory speeds. We'll turn even that in the definition of digital divide. The industry innovation is moving fast, is regulation. These are the comments you are getting, is the spectrum ready and the rest. About spectrum, the usage of the spectrum is many, a lot of, there are more than 20 radio communication services. But the main ones we are here for about digital inclusion and access and affordability is IMT, one of them, the mobiles. These days the discussion is spectrum abundance. Our team, my colleagues, there is a discussion on spectrum abundance. We should not be discussing scarcity anymore. It's technologically scarce, but we should be talking of sharing, license sharing, and unlicensed pure 100%. We are now discussing abundance of spectrum instead of scarcity of spectrum. About the availability of spectrum, I have not received from our IMT industry any complaint about them not operational due to lack of spectrum. On a light note, there is adequate 5G Roadmap has reserved adequate spectrum. One of the band 2.6 is already opened up. The refarming of 3.5, which is one of the core bands, is nearly done. And we have Safaricom and others already preparing themselves. The 6G upper and the rest, if you look at the outcome of WRC in the past 2019 and the one of this year, we are opening up in a lot of spectrum band for IMT. For Wi-Fi unlicensed, Kenya specifically has doubled the spectrum for Wi-Fi. I think Paul and the team should be happy about that, the 6G, lower 6 gigahertz. If you look at the latest published CA short-range device guidelines, 5 gig to a portion of 6 gig, we've added 500 plus more megahertz for Wi-Fi. This for the reason that at the end, we need a lot of spectrum. As Adam said, instead of constricting, we give the opportunity for Wi-Fi to offload the huge data the citizens are generating. So as to assure the industry spectrum for 5G, for innovation, for future is available in the roadmap. The industry is slowly, I think they are preparing themselves commercially, but the band is there by end of this year or by early January, latest February. We'll be calling the industry to announce the outcome of the WRC this year, and we expect a lot more of spectrum for the industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haji. You've really given us a lot of insight. But what I picked from your comments is it affordable? Better than it used to be before. Yeah? Do you agree, the audience? Better than it used to be before. So I come to the audience now. We'll take 5 questions or comments on a first come, first served basis. Yes, I see one hand there. Catherine?
Hello. My name is Catherine Chalo from the Kenya ICT Action Network, PIC Director. So Mr. Haji has very well mentioned that we have moved now from the narrative of scarce spectrum to sharing frameworks. In 2021, there was a recommendation that there was going to be spectrum set aside for underserved areas. Where is the authority on that? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can take another. There's another question at the back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am Dr. George Kinga from Kenyatta University. I got the invitation, then I realized it's ICT and I'm in broadcasting, but it's related. And my question is really about those of us who are small station. I'm from KUTV and radio services, and looking for solutions because of cost of data. Those of us who use the backpack type of live view coverage when we're doing live events, and we have to get data into the same cards, and that's very costly. So maybe DJ, you have a solution for people like us, because we roam, and the backpack is a revolution that has enabled us to do that, because some of us cannot afford or be vans.
My name is Billy Mango. I'm a student at East University. My question would be, what are the policies that are in place to seeing Kenyans being educated? Because I think we're talking so much about the technology and the advancements we're making as a country, but then that can only go so far if citizens are not aware of what we have. When we speak about 5G, I won't say that all of us in this room are actually aware of what 5G offers to us, although we happen to be customers of Safaricom. So my question would be, what are the policies that are in place to seeing citizens educated about what we already do in the country?
Okay, Charles?
Thank you, Barack. Thank you, members, and the questions that have come this direction. I think I'll just want to echo the question by the colleague there from the university around. So, what is this that makes people use these services? I think that's the question that we should take away, and that is actually what we all have to be pondering about. Of course, as the technologies keep on advancing their technologies, I think even as we speak today, people still do not know the value that they have derived from the 4G and the 3G and the 2Gs. That should be the big question that all of us should try to respond, then the rest of the things will fall in place. So in terms of my closing remarks, I think usage, and usage. This usage has to be around value proposition. What does this service, voice and data services, really mean to my mother, my grandmother, my uncles in the village? That is the only way this bottom of the pyramid will be able to maximize the usage of those services, and therefore, at the end of the day, then even the bottom lines for the private sector will be realized. And I believe by extension, even our contribution to the Universal Service Fund. I think no one has spoken about the Universal Service Fund here, but that is another big asset that the Communications Authority of Kenya is managing, that is also addressing those gap areas. So you can see that usage is actually going to be around value proposition, and this is going to be good for everyone, including the private sector, public sector. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ.
Yes, let me try and address the issue that was raised by the professor. Number one, if you have a backpack and you're roaming, you're a nomadic customer, fixed wireless access is not the silver bullet solution for that one, unfortunately. So I'm afraid you're stuck with mobile bundles for that one. Regarding ethics, I share your concern. We are a big proponent of the initiatives that the CA is taking, for instance, with the child online protection. If even a company like Google has removed their motto, do no evil, from a manifesto, I think we all should scratch behind our ears on thinking what we can do as a society. And then as closing remarks, internet access, we believe, is a universal basic right. It can help and it can greatly accelerate widening and deepening the tax base in the longer term if you don't try and strangle the goose that lays the golden eggs in the short term.
Thank you. Caroline?
Thank you very much. So for me, my part in short, what I would say is that I think at the end of the day, the one critical thing that we need to achieve in order to see us making progress towards closing the usage gap is actually implementing the policies that we have in place. So in Africa, a lot of countries have stellar policies already developed and regulations. I think the political goodwill that is required is what we need to cultivate to see these policies actually see the light of day. That's the first thing. The other thing is we need to see a lot more coordination and collaboration between government agencies. So when you're developing a digital strategy that talks about wanting to roll out infrastructure in place, and of course wanting to see consumers uptake services, it is good to link that with your objectives of revenue raising, for instance. So ensuring that at the end of the day, those two departments speak to each other. And when you're setting those objectives, they're aligned, similar to what you would see in a private sector setting, for instance. And the other thing is at a consumer level, we need to get the issue of device affordability right. We need to make sure that we have devices with the right features actually in the hands of consumers. Otherwise, we'll continue speaking about closing the usage gap, and that is not addressed. And there are various things that can be done. It's trying to understand why is the cost of device the way it is? What is the cost of tax? What is the cost of logistics? What is the cost of actually putting these features in place? The camera, all those features, what is that cost? Then so once you understand that cost, what needs to be done to bring those costs down? Because you can say that you will bring taxation down, but as long as these other issues are not addressed, then it means that the cost will still remain high. We have seen in some governments like Tanzania where they had removed import duty on devices, did not seem a major impact, the tax came back. So I think it's a cocktail of solutions to ensure that we see this issue of device is addressed. The issue of cost that leads to affordability is one that also needs to be looked at. So how do we make cost of providing services even is better? So how do we simplify rollout of networks to make sure that the costs are addressed? How do we make our rolling out of our networks more efficient? How do we make even things like tax collection, tax management even more efficient? Because at the end of the day, we are trying to see how we can reduce costs of rolling out services. Technology has their role to play or can be able to be an enabler of ensuring that these efficiencies are actually achieved. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline. Adam?
Thank you. So I guess I should start with maybe good news for the professor. One, I think you have seen in the last 2 years, and you'll see a lot more, the cost of data, mobile data is going down quite quickly, actually. And as the 5G rollout expands, I think Safaricom said that their results presentation last week, or this week they had 300 sites. They're hoping for 800 by next year. I think they have around 6,000. So it's still a small percent of their total number, even by the time they get to 800. But that's progress, actually. And don't forget, other countries are still working on the rollout. But 5G's biggest benefit is it's way more capacity, i.e. way more speed from one base station, which means that it costs much less to deliver per megabyte or per gigabyte from the operator. Because that one base station now could do what before was, say, 3 base stations worth of 4G, for example. So that's why costs are able to come down. Of course, there's other aspects. There's power costs and land rental costs and other things that come into it. But that's what's happening over time, where data prices are coming down. And that's good news. And I think with your backpack, if you get a 5G SIM card, of course, you can't roam yet. But once Airtel and others launch their networks, hopefully it will help. The second thing is you don't need to worry about whatever the US says about Huawei. In Kenya, we 100% meet every Kenya regulation and law. We're registered with the Data Protection Commissioner as both as a processor and controller, and whatever they say about cybersecurity is really irrelevant. I think there's about 200 countries that have listened and ignored everything they've said and still work very closely with Huawei. Our customers here, both government and operators, have been inspecting our equipment for the whole 25 years we've been working here. They found no problems. If you want to ask them, feel free to ask them. For a longer conversation, we can talk later. But rest assured, if there are real issues, I think countries or operators would have made decisions. There's no real issues. It's just politics or jealousy or whatever it happens to be.
Thank you. Mr. Haji, close it for us.
Thank you, Barak. About the the spectrum for underserved areas, I didn't understand it well, but maybe this is some of the initiatives. We launched the dynamic spectrum, sharing the TV white space, or is it about USF? There is nothing packed from our side. Just to summarize, we have not packed or abandoned any of those initiatives. Like TV white space, they're expanding slowly. They can only expand at the pace at which they are commercially viable. We have since done community networks, which are developing and growing very well. For Dr. from KU, the enough is not enough. I think in the IT industry, ICT, we will leap so many times every few years. The regulator should prepare for when 5G comes to mature in Kenya in 1 or 2 years. Now we have maybe 4 mobile operators. We are expecting thousands of private network operators, verticals. This hotel can be an operator licensed separately, serving the neighborhood, a factory, a campus. We are looking at a whole re-engineering of the ICT regulatory environment. The digital skills is key. I'll just summarize by saying in our discussion on our 5-year strategic plan, CA is focused on digital skilling, is one of the main aspects that we are looking at as part of the agency for digital transformation of the country within the government manifesto. So we say the digital by the next, I think, 4 or 5 years, if our strategy works well, which we'll resource and try to make it work, I am sure we'll substantially reduce the digital demand that we're discussing today. Barak, we'll do it bit by bit. May not be to zero, it cannot be zero. When you reduce access gap, there will be affordability gap, and there will be that. And then there is an emerging aspect of e-waste. 5G will come with multiples of the numbers of gadgets. What happens to all those gadgets? Huawei and the others, there may be an extended supplier responsibility. There's a lot that the environment is getting more complex but interesting. Currently, the government, CA and the ministry and the other stakeholders are working on a review of the law and the regulations. The equity-related issues, what percentage should an international entity be paying, for how long, what would be taxation, and there are a number of aspects to make regulatory barriers as minimum and light touch as possible. Those are the few issues that I can talk about. But as you said, Charles, you said usage, but do we know how to use digital skills is also a very big gap at all the levels, both at expert skilling at high level industry and ourselves, and at the usage level at the villages, and their efforts towards that. Thank you.